My wife made an octopus aquarium in our house for her hobby, so I divorced her. I should have known something was off the first time I noticed the Squid Enthusiasts Club charge on our bank statement. $1,000. $1,000. Just gone. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of scam. A phishing thing. Hackers. Who else would siphon that kind of money under the name of a club that sounded like it hosted underwater TED Talks? But then I asked my wife, Lauren, and she didn't even blink. Oh, she said, not looking up from her phone, that's my subscription. Subscription to what? I asked, because there's no way you could be subscribed to Squid. To Squid Post. I blinked. To what now? She finally looked at me, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear like she was about to explain quantum physics. Squid Post. It's a monthly delivery service. They send you rare, ethically sourced squid ink, bioluminescent accessories, and sometimes you're going to love this squid-themed tea towels. I stared at her. Squid-themed tea towels. She nodded like this was a perfectly normal thing. And sometimes stickers. I waited for the part where she'd laugh. Where she'd say, just kidding, babe. Gotcha. But it never came. Instead, she scrolled back to her Pinterest board, which I noticed now was nothing but cephalopods. Ink drawings. Cuttlefish-inspired lamps. A velvet armchair in the shape of a squid's mantle. It was like I'd married an octopus in disguise. So, I said slowly, you've been spending $1,000 every month on squid? Technically squid merchandise, she corrected. And the community. There's a community? Oh, yeah. Huge. We've got forums, meetups, international Zoom hangouts. Last month, we had a bake-off. Someone made squid-shaped macarons. I walked to the sink and stared out the window like I was waiting for someone to explain to me what kind of cosmic joke I'd wandered into. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-hobby. I play guitar. I've got a modest collection of vintage records I'm overly proud of. But Lauren's thing wasn't just a hobby. It was a lifestyle. $1,000 a month lifestyle. So, I asked, trying to stay calm, how long has this been going on? About 9 months, she said, too casually. Why? 9 months. I sat down. She looked at me like I was being dramatic. You always spend money on coffee and gear and those little knobs for your guitar pedals. This is my thing. Lauren, I spend like $50 a month on knobs. You could buy 20 guitars a year with what you're spending on calamari fashion. She tilted her head. Don't be disrespectful. It's cephalopod couture. Reader, this is the moment I realized my marriage was being slowly digested in a squid-shaped pouch of fiscal nonsense. Things started unraveling fast after that. Everywhere I looked, there were signs I'd missed. The squid mug in the cabinet. The ink-stained apron. The personalized calendar marked with reminders like Octopus Art Show and monthly tentacle Q&A. I thought those were inside jokes. Turns out, they were appointments. Our guest bathroom? Had a framed print that read, Live, Laugh, Squid. She wasn't even trying to hide it. The next month, when the charge came through again, I told her we needed to talk about it. She said we were financially healthy and that I was being stifling. It brings me joy, she said. Lauren, it brings Visa joy. That didn't go over well. The problem was, we'd always kept our finances mostly together. Shared account, dual cards, same savings goals. There were no secret stashes, no separate spending accounts. But over the last few months, she'd been subtly shifting things, setting up autopayments, opening new digital wallets, even redirecting our Amazon subscription orders through the Kraken Collective, which I now knew was not a metal band, but a squid-inspired shopping co-op. I tried to be understanding. I tried to laugh. But you can only laugh so many times before you realize the joke's on you. The tipping point came on a Saturday morning. I opened the garage and found it full of boxes. I mean full. As in, you couldn't walk through it without tripping over something vaguely ink-related. Boxes of Squid Post deliveries, unopened. A life-size stuffed squid that I'm pretty sure blinked. A poster of famous squids throughout history. A lamp made of resin and tentacle-like arms holding Edison bulbs. Lauren was sitting cross-legged in the middle of it all, wearing a sweatshirt that said, I'd rather be in the deep. She looked up at me, smiling. You want to help me organize? I didn't answer. I just stared. Because right there, on top of the box next to her, was a brochure for something called the Squid Sabbatical Retreat. Price tag, $11,950. She followed my gaze and said, oh, that's next year. It's in the Maldives. Of course it is, I said quietly. Let me guess. You commune with squid? They have real-time ink painting classes. Right. And underwater poetry readings. Right. And we stay in pods. Of course. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because I was mad. I just needed space. Not emotional space, physical space. The bedroom had been redecorated while I wasn't looking. The bedsheets had octopus embroidery. The wallpaper had a coral pattern that looked suspiciously like tentacle suckers if you stared long enough. I lay there staring at the ceiling, doing math in my head. $1,000 a month for 9 months. A $12,000 retreat. Plus all the merch, decor, gifts for her squid sisters. We were pushing 20 grand on a hobby that had evolved into something else. Something cultish. I started to realize that the woman I married, the one who used to laugh at marine documentaries and had once screamed when a shrimp brushed her ankle at the beach, had changed. Slowly. Quietly. Inkily. I still loved her, I really did. But I wasn't sure I could share a life or a bank account with someone who had a squid-themed robe and referred to our laundry room as the inking chamber. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about everything. Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of soft chimes and ambient ocean sounds. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but no, Lauren had replaced our usual phone alarms with a cephalopod Serenity soundtrack. Volume, max. She padded into the living room in her slippers shaped like tiny squid. Isn't it so much calmer than that dreadful phone beep? I sat up slowly, rubbing my face. Lauren, can we just have a regular Sunday? No tentacles, no ink pouches, no squid muffins? She blinked. Why would I make muffins without the ink? We sat in silence for a moment, her standing there with a tray of what looked like charcoal biscuits, me wondering how we got here from my due to would you like your eggs tentacle side up? Look, I finally said, motioning for her to sit. This has gotten out of hand. Her expression didn't change. You don't respect my interests. That's not true. I respected it when it was cute. I respected it when it was weird. I even respected it when it was $1,000 a month, which, by the way, I still think is financially reckless. But now, our house looks like an underwater gift shop and you're planning to disappear to the Maldives for a squid sabbatical. Alone. You could come, she said. I stared. Lauren. You know I have work. I told you, they have a partner track. Spouses get to kayak with marine biologists. That's not a thing I want. She sighed. That's the problem, isn't it? You never want to grow with me. I'm evolving. You're not evolving. You're molting into a different person. Wrong metaphor. She narrowed her eyes. Molting? I don't know, I panicked. The next few days were tense. She stopped talking to me except to ask for more space in the fridge for her ink jars. I moved my leftover pizza to the garage fridge. I swear it started tasting like fish. I'd come home from work to find new packages at the door. Tentacle-shaped cushions. A giant inflatable squid. A book titled Squid Are Smarter Than Your Husband, a memoir. She spent hours on her squid post forums, laughing at inside jokes I couldn't decipher. I caught phrases like glow gang, tentacle time, and he doesn't even appreciate the nuance of chromatophores. Meanwhile, I was falling apart. My coworkers started asking why I looked so tired. Why I smelled like brine. One guy thought I'd picked up a second job at a sushi bar. At night, I lay awake listening to her Zoom calls with the International Squid Collective. Sometimes I heard chanting. Once, I heard a guy from Sweden reading a poem called The Ink Within Us. I didn't ask. It was my buddy Chris who finally said it. She's obsessed, man. Yeah, but maybe it's a phase. Chris gave me a look. You've been saying that since she bought the custom squid bike helmet. I groaned. I just don't want to be the guy who leaves over a hobby. This isn't a hobby. It's a cephalopod coup. I had no response to that. One night, I came home and the dining table was gone. I mean, not just the chairs, the whole table. In its place was a giant tank. Like, 6 feet long, bubbling, glowing faintly from beneath. Inside it, a robotic squid. Animatronic. Wires trailing like nerves. It blinked. What is that? I asked, afraid of the answer. His name is Herbert, Lauren said without turning around. He's part of the new interactive feature from Squid Post. There's a squid robot in our living room. He responds to mood lighting. We stood there in silence, me staring at Herbert slowly rotating in the water like a small submerged omen. That night, I had dreams about being swallowed whole by debt and bioluminescence. The moment that broke me wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the squid robe. It wasn't Herbert. It wasn't even the $1,700 she spent on a squid resin art workshop that took place in a barn in Vermont. It was lunch. I came home early, hoping to surprise her, to reconnect, to talk about anything other than aquatic mollusks. I picked up sushi, ironically, yes, but still. She was on the couch, watching Finding Dory with subtitles in Japanese, crocheting what looked like a squid-shaped sock. Hey, I said, holding up the bag. Lunch? She glanced over. Does it have calamari? I blinked. No. Why would I? Good. I wouldn't be able to eat it. Not after I bonded with them. They're squid. You subscribe to their destruction. No, she said, eyes suddenly cold. I celebrate their legacy. I stood there, holding the lunch we used to split in the early days, back when we'd joke about which roll was more likely to ruin our cholesterol. And I realized I didn't know who I was looking at anymore. I think I need a break, I said, not fully understanding the weight of the words until they were out. She paused her movie. From lunch? No. From all of this. I stayed at Chris's place that night. He had a normal fridge. His thermostat didn't say climate simulation, kelp forest. When I woke up the next morning, there was no squid mural on the ceiling. It felt weird. Like breathing fresh air after months of being slightly underwater. She texted me a few times that week. Once to tell me Herbert missed me. Once to ask if I could forward her a confirmation email for a squid-themed meditation retreat. But not once to ask why I left. And maybe that said everything. Maybe she didn't want me to come back. Or maybe I already had. Chris was trying his best to be supportive. He offered me the guest room, gave me space, didn't ask too many questions. But even he couldn't ignore the fact that I hadn't exactly walked out over infidelity or abuse or some colossal betrayal. I'd left because of squid. Except, it wasn't about squid. It never was. It was about feeling like a stranger in my own home. Like I'd been gradually phased out by something I couldn't compete with. And no one wants to lose a marriage to a mollusk. I spent most of that week in a weird limbo. I kept thinking she'd text something real. Something vulnerable. Something human. But all I got were reminders. Lauren, don't forget to cancel the shared streaming service if you're going to be gone a while. I switched to Octoview. Lauren, Herbert has started reacting to thunder. Just FYI if you come by. Try not to startle him. Lauren, your Amazon account is still logged in. I ordered a squid pattern table runner. Don't be weird about it. I wasn't weird about it. I didn't reply at all. One night, Chris and I were on the balcony, having cheap beers and talking about stuff that had nothing to do with marine life. You still love her? He asked. Yeah, I said. I think I do. He nodded. But you're not going back. I hesitated. I don't know. It's hard to walk away from someone you built a whole life with. Harder than living in an aquarium? I didn't answer. Eventually, I went back to the house. Not to stay, just to get the rest of my stuff. I timed it for when she'd be at her Squid Sync event, which I assumed was some kind of tentacled book club or underwater conference call. I wasn't sure anymore. The house was exactly how I left it. Which is to say, completely alien. The living room was glowing blue. The lights were connected to some app she'd called Cephglow. The curtains were nude covered in tiny, smiling squid. The fridge was full of labeled jars. There was a sign above the sink that read, "Be kind, rewind, the ink." But the part that hit me hardest? The closet. Half of it was still mine. Not cleaned out. Not boxed up. Just untouched. As if she hadn't decided anything either. I sat down on the bed, our bed, and stared at the spot where we used to fall asleep watching old shows. She loved crime dramas. Now, I imagined she'd switch to documentaries about marine ecosystems or animated films featuring oddly relatable squids. For the first time in weeks, I missed her more than I was angry. I left a note on the counter. Just a simple one. Lauren. This isn't about squid. It never was. I miss you, but I miss the version of us that used to talk about things before we bought themed tea towels. Maybe we were both pretending we hadn't changed. But I think we did. And now I don't know how to be married to someone who doesn't want to surface anymore. Take care. It was the only honest thing I'd written in a long time. A few days later, I got a reply. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a voicemail. It was a handwritten note, folded in thirds, slipped into the mailbox at Chris's. The handwriting was familiar. The paper smelled faintly like lavender and salt. I unfolded it with shaking hands. Nate. I read your note while feeding Herbert. He blinked twice, which I've come to interpret as concern. It took me a while to figure out how to respond. Not because I didn't know what to say. But because I think you're right, and that's always harder to face. When I found the Squid Post group last year, I was lonely. Not because of you, but because of me. I was drifting. Feeling invisible in the life I helped build. You were always so steady, so reliable. I started to wonder if I had anything left that was just mine. The community gave me purpose, structure, and yes, merchandise. It gave me something to look forward to. And then it gave me identity. Too much, maybe. I let it become a wall between us, not a bridge. And for that, I'm sorry. I miss you, too. But I don't know if we can go back. Maybe we both need to figure out who we are without all the clutter, yours and mine. I'll always be grateful for the life we had. Even if it ended in an ocean of absurdity. Lauren. I sat there for a long time. The ache wasn't sharp. It was quiet. Cold. Like being underwater too long and realizing you can't quite reach the surface. I folded the letter, slid it into my jacket pocket, and looked out at the street. It was raining. But not hard. Just enough to blur the lines of everything. I didn't respond to her letter. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how to respond to something that already felt complete. There was nothing missing, nothing unsaid. Just the quiet kind of closure that doesn't require applause. So I kept living. Chris and I joked less about Squid, and more about the future. I started going to the gym again. I picked up my guitar, really picked it up, for the first time in months. Played old songs I'd written back when I still believed in simpler endings. I found a studio apartment that smelled like sawdust and rain. Tiny, but honest. I didn't decorate it with themes. No framed art about tentacles or oceans. Just a bookshelf. A thrift store lamp. A single chair that squeaked when I leaned back. The silence was heavy, but it was mine. Some nights, I caught myself scrolling through old photos. Lauren, laughing at a Halloween party, dressed as a disgruntled octopus. Lauren, halfway through painting our bedroom that perfect sea glass green. Lauren, squinting at the sun with an expression like she was just about to say something funny. She always did. A month passed. Then two. Her name came up less. My friends stopped tiptoeing around it. My mom stopped asking if I'd called her. Herbert remained unmentioned. And then, one afternoon, I got an envelope. No return address. Just a strange little stamp with what looked like an ink blot. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Inside was a card. Thick stock. Handmade. The front was plain, just a single tentacle, elegantly drawn in silver ink. Inside, a single sentence. You were never the problem. I just forgot how to share the air. And a second line, in a different pen. P.S. Herbert blinked twice when I told him you'd be proud of me. There was no signature. But I smiled anyway. A few weeks later, I saw her. Not intentionally. I was picking up coffee on a Thursday afternoon, halfway through a half-hearted run of errands. She was walking out of a bookstore, wearing the same beat-up denim jacket I used to steal for grocery runs. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired. But calm. She saw me before I could turn. We both paused. There was no drama. No sudden swell of music. Just two people who used to orbit the same moon, staring across a sidewalk like it used to be a kitchen floor. She gave a small wave. I nodded. And that was it. People always think breaking up happens in the heat. A fight. A betrayal. Something that snaps. But the truth is, sometimes it happens in the drift. A slow turning away. Not because of something terrible, but because of too many somethings that didn't quite fit anymore. $1,000 a month on Squid nonsense? Sure. That was the tip of the iceberg. But underneath it was months of missed connections, parallel conversations, and two people evolving at different speeds in different directions. She found something she needed. And I lost something I thought was permanent. But maybe that's what life is, learning to let go without drowning in regret. I still think about her sometimes. When I hear the ocean. When I pass by sushi restaurants. When I see a strangely shaped teapot in a thrift store and wonder if it came from one of her squid post boxes. I don't feel angry anymore. I feel grateful. Because even though it ended weirdly, absurdly, it ended honestly. And not many people get that. We were a good story. Not a perfect one. But a real one. And if nothing else, I know this. Somewhere out there, there's a woman with a robotic squid named Herbert, who once loved a man who couldn't understand her obsession but tried. And that's worth something. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.